having it all is not a destination. I think having it all is like figuring out how to have the collection of stuff in your life that's right for you and that really feels good to you, and then like be able to manage it in a way that you can enjoy the ride.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 614 with guest Cherylanne Skolnicki. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. How's your summer going? I hope it's good. It's been a hot one, hasn't it? Good Lord. And I'm sure we're all kind of tired of talking about the weather, but I had to mention it because we're sweating over here in the South. Yikes, it's been hot. But speaking of hot, Amy Ahlers and I are doing a really amazing free webinar today, the day that this podcast comes out, July 17th, Wednesday at noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern. If you missed it, if it's a little bit in the future, there will be a replay. Head on over to AndreaOwen.com/links. It's all about getting your creative writing project done and out the door, no matter what it is. If it is poetry, if it is journaling, maybe you don't want your journaling out the door, but you can definitely get it done. And even writing a book, whether it's a novel or nonfiction or whatever. Amy Ahlers and I have done this free call a couple of times in the past handful of years. We first did it right in the onset of the pandemic in 2020. And then we did it again in 2021. We also teach a coaching program that we're going to talk about a little bit during that free webinar called The Writing Experience. You may remember me talking about it. It's a 6-week program, 2 calls a week. It's excellent. We always get the most amazing group of people for that program. But head on over to AndreaOwen.com/links to check it out, read about it, and see if it's for you. And switching gears, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. I'm so excited for you to meet her. It was such a great call. Cherylanne Skolnicki is on a mission to redefine what it means to have it all. She has taught thousands of brilliant women around the world how to design their lives so they can play big at work and at home while protecting time for themselves. As the founder and CEO of Brilliant Brilliance, she also hosts the top-rated Brilliant Brilliance podcast. Her work has been featured on NBC, ABC, and CBS, and in publications like Forbes, Working Mother, and the Huffington Post. With her signature Brilliant Balance Blueprint, she equips women to pursue their potential without regret. So without further ado, here is Cherylanne. Cherylanne, thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
I am so happy that you're here. I was telling you before we started recording, like, I can't believe our paths haven't crossed before because our work is similar. And I feel like we talk about the same thing. So let's get into it. Like, let's start from the beginning. And what is Brilliant Brilliance? Brilliant Balance. It's a mouthful.
Yes, I know. Well, maybe it should be Brilliant Brilliance. So the origin story of Brilliant Balance is that I started it to help women find better balance, right? I mean, the tagline was originally balanced life, brilliant possibilities, and kind of viewing it as a ladder that if we found some semblance of balance, we might actually be able to pursue the fulfillment of our own potential. And I still think that holds true. I'm a little less attached to the word balance. Potentially, if I could get it out of the brand, I might do that because I think it's so fraught with confusion. Like if you start to talk to women about balance, they immediately are like, oh, does that even really exist? And I am much more focused on women being able to fulfill their potential with less friction, right? I'm on a mission to redefine what it means to have it all. And Brilliant Balance is the brand umbrella I do that under.
Okay. And so that takes me to my next question is what is having it all mean to you? And feel free to take the long road because I'm interested.
Yeah. It's like that might not be a short answer. Well, the most important thing is that having it all is not a destination, right? It's kind of the way we feel while we're living life. And I'm of the belief that most of us in Gen X and millennial, those two generations of women were flat out promised we could have it all.
Yeah.
And I think we were pretty clear on what all meant. Like most of us wanted the same general collection of goodies, right? The degree, the great career, the spouse or partner, the house, the kids, the car. Like, there's kind of a collection of goodies
Generally
that we
speaking,
wanted to have. And yes, variability, right? Some people made choices along the way around what was in and out of that basket. But in general, we kind of knew what success was supposed to look like. And I think a lot of us very dutifully followed the path to acquire all of those goodies and didn't bargain for the fact that it was going to come along with a really long to-do list. Like doing all of the things to manage the things we have is what is taking us under. And so I think having it all is like figuring out how to have the collection of stuff in your life that's right for you, that really feels good to you, and then like be able to manage it in a way that you can enjoy the ride.
It sounds like a template that allows you to sort of fill in the pieces of what it is that you really want, which it was a whole other conversation because a lot of women aren't sure.
Yes.
Many years ago, I read the book Perfect Girls, Starving Daughters by Courtney Martin. I think this was around 09-ish.
Yes.
And have you read it? Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about that, how, and I think she's around our age, maybe a little bit, maybe an elder millennial, young Gen X, and how we grew up watching, whether they were our mothers or seeing women on TV, and that like 1970s-ish feminist movement of you can have it all. You can have everything you want. And we grew up hearing we needed to do it all.
Yes.
In order to have it all.
Yes.
And it was this sort of, what does she call it? Like the unintended negative side effect of
consequences.
That.
Yes.
And then also we tended to grow up with partners, and I'm speaking more specifically around heterosexual partnerships, where the women do most of the heavy lifting around the house. And so it became, we grew up on antidepressants, and I'm not saying that,
there's nothing wrong with those, right?
Yeah. And then sometimes it's for different reasons, but it's like, it's this whole generation of women who are fed up and cynical. I feel like, do you see that a lot in your work?
I do. And I think that's what I'm really maybe the most passionate about unwinding is I don't want us to be a generation of women when we have this much opportunity to be this cranky.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like we should be able to have a level of joy and ease and flow. Like that was the promise, right? And I think what we skipped was how we were going to grapple with the expectations that were placed on us in each of the different roles we were adopting, right? Like in my case, I am a wife of almost 24 years. I have 3 teenage children. I've been a senior executive in a big company. I've run my own company. I've been a volunteer. I've been a board member. I'm a daughter, right? All these different roles. We have very stringent expectations of ourselves of how we will fulfill those roles, right? What it takes to be a good version of any one of those things. And that's where I think we get crushed, is under the weight of expectations. So if we can rewrite those rules that we somehow adopted, right? We just sort of like internalized them without really realizing that's what was happening. If we can rewrite them in a way that we get more freedom and more flexibility and more of a chance to customize them in a way that's right for us, that's how I think you can actually have more things in your life, right? You can play more roles without going under.
Yeah, it's very nuanced. And I think that's one of the problems in personal development and self-help when we hear, I call it like the miniaturization of personal growth, where we see these memes that say things like, life balance does exist, or you can have it all. And that leaves out so much. And everyone's situation is unique. And just to kind of put a bow on what we just talked about is I love what you said. And also I think that there's room for both. I think there's room for the frustration. I think many, if not all women have every right to, all women have the right to feel whatever they're going to feel about their circumstances, their situations. And I think a lot of us are fucking pissed. are angry because of these expectations, because of our social conditioning. Like when you sort of open your eyes and realize, I mean, this is what a lot of my third book was about Make Some Noise. Like we grew up socially conditioned around a lot of things that are just impossible for us to maintain. And you get to a kind of a breaking point of like, fuck this shit. So all that to say, there's room for all of the feelings, like everything from frustration to rage, and also the joy and aliveness that can come with sort of designing your own life. So it sounds like, is that sort of like what it comes down to, is like designing your own life?
I think that it's the power of feeling like you have some agency over how your life turns out, right? There are a lot of things, if I could wave my magic fairy wand and have universal childcare, for example, of course I would have it, right? But I'm also not going to wait for the white knight to come riding it on the horse to provide. It's probably not going to happen. It didn't happen in the years that I was raising children. So I think I doubled down on what can I control? What do I have a level of agency over? And where is the freedom within that? What choices can I exercise? So while yes, these expectations have been handed down, do I have to adopt them? That's kind of where the freedom to me lies, is I can be aware of them and I can choose to say, not for me. I reject that expectation. And that's where we start to get little pieces of freedom back, right? Of 100% what you said about all feelings are valid. And there are very real, very difficult expectations and circumstances that a lot of us are living in. The ability to keep saying, what choices do I have even within these constraints, I think is super important, right? Super important. So finding personal agency and throwing our shoulders to the wheel of broader social change is also super important. It's not work that I do a ton of personally these days. I've made real clear choices in the era that I was raising children at home to say, I am not going to do broader work. Like I'm not going to sit on boards. I'm not going to be a part of other movements beyond my own. But as my children fly the coop here in short order, I think that's work that I'm really looking forward to returning to, is more of the broader movement of what can we affect. Mm-hmm.
I love that question that you threw out, like, what choices do I have in these circumstances? Like sometimes it's just pausing to reflect on that, because we can get to places where we feel completely helpless and stuck and things like that. Which brings me to, I'm wondering, and maybe we already kind of covered this, but what do you think gets in the way of this for women? And more specifically, this being having it all and designing the life that they want.
Or making the choices, right? Like what gets in the way of making the choices that would move us closer to that? And I've thought about this question a lot. This is like, I'm a journaler and a modeler. I run around with a pencil and a notebook 100% of the time. My husband teases me because I'll come downstairs on Saturday morning and I have 3 notebooks and a computer and a pencil and a mug of coffee. I don't travel light around the house even. But it's because my brain is always working on these little, like, what is the connective tissue? What are the dots here? And I think there's a handful of things that get in our way when it comes to exercising choices that we actually have, but we're afraid to exercise. One of them is guilt. The emotion of guilt that we experience that says someone else is going to suffer if I exercise this choice. Period, full stop, right? So let's take a classic example. A lot of the women I work with are like, I really want to work out more. Okay, great. Why don't you? Well, I mean, the kids get up so early and I need to be with them and they need that time with me, or like my husband gets home so there's all these reasons that someone else will be inconvenienced if I do this thing that I actually want to do. That's guilt. That gets in our way. It stops us in our tracks. We do not handle guilt well, broadly speaking. Second one is FOMO. I can't say no to this thing. I'll miss the opportunity. If I don't go on the field trip with my child, I won't be the mom who had the field trip experience. If I don't sit at the practice, I won't have watched the practice. What if that's the day that they finally learn the trick or do the thing, right? So I'm giving parenting examples and they translate broadly, but guilt and FOMO. Third would be other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Judgment, right? What's somebody going to think of me? If I exercise this choice, what's mom going to say? What's my spouse going to say? What are the neighbors going to say? Like, I can't tolerate the fact that someone else is going to have an opinion, right, about this thing that I want to do. And those are 3 of the big ones. Can you think of others? There's probably a couple more.
Yeah, I think, well, I also have experienced this myself, and it's a little bit more of a 7-layer dip. Reason is that I think many of us deep down fear that things are going to work out really well. And what if I get the thing that I want? That's either a feeling of unworthiness, that they don't deserve it, which is, deep stuff. Also, that they can't sustain it. That was a big one for me. Like, if I have all the success, how am I going to sustain it? How am I going to top it? Especially
The
when it comes to
pressure.
my career, the pressure of sustaining it, and then also the pressure of the fear of passing other people up. Like being the first one in my family to do X, Y, Z. Yeah, and just like the worry and the shame around, who do you think you are? Not that anyone ever even said that to me in my family.
But it's up here, right? It's in our head that they could. I'll give you another one is the loss of control. This is a big one for me. Like, if I have to let somebody else do this, I'm going to give up control over how it gets done. And then it won't be done my way. It won't be done right.
Or if it gets done. Yeah.
Right. But like, the reality is there are people in my life who will pick stuff up that I'm continuing to hold on to myself because they won't do it the right way. And so that's another blocker. If you just think about those things we just said in this conversation, like guilt and FOMO and judgment and loss of control, and then you add in like fear of success, losing our people, all that emotional stuff, like it's our emotions that ultimately block the choices. We have to tolerate some pretty uncomfortable emotions to get the freedom of choice that we actually have.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Already in the deep end here. We need to take a quick ad break. And when we get back, I want to talk a little bit more about what keeps us stuck. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. I have definitely been in that place where my paycheck ran out before the next one got here. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for a girls' night out, a last-minute gift for a loved one, or even summer camp for the kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN, in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It really, really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com. What pulls us off of what you call the progress curve? Is it the things we talked about right before the break, or is it something different?
Well, I think lots of things, right, potentially pull us off of the progress curve. But there's a couple that I see a lot in the coaching work that I do with women. I work with women leaders in a coaching membership, and they're typically either business owners or they are senior executives within companies. Okay. These are women who, by external standards, you'd say they probably have everything figured out, but they're also, growth minded, like really growth oriented individuals. More is always more, right? To the kind of people that I work with. So they want to make progress all the time. They want their progress to be linear up and to the right, that kind of classic growth curve. And the reality is it's not, right? We've all seen the meme where it's a much more roller coaster looking shaped curve.
Yeah.
And the things that pull us off our curve of the progress we could be making vary throughout our life. One of them is like the dilution of our effort. When we get distracted and we start trying to do too many things at the same time, we're doing a little bit of everything, that is a big thing that will slow down progress. So like Greg McCune's book, Essentialism, I read it years ago. I think the notion of really knowing what is the main thing that you are trying to accomplish, how much of your effort can you line up behind that, certainly accelerates progress. Sometimes I think that events outside of ourselves, like a crisis in our family, a crisis in our company, something that really requires our attention, can pull us off of our progress curve. And we are super frustrated if we didn't initiate the crisis and it's taking us out of our lane. I think sometimes we are overthinking what is the next step, right? To the point of paralysis. So we're trying to get it just right before we take the action instead of just taking the action, kind of imperfect action.
Seeing what happens. Yeah.
I mean, those are at least three.
That last one. Yeah.
Resonates.
I also think that some of that comes down to personality. I think some people are just quicker on the draw, if you will, for lack of a better expression, and making decisions. I do want to circle back though to what we were talking about around emotions and how you were saying, it's the emotions that keep us stuck, that keep us sort of paralyzed. And is there any kind of tips or advice that you have or strategies that you use with your clients that can help people who struggle? Because a lot of people in my community struggle to even know when they're emotional about something, or like to name the emotions, like let alone like processing the emotions and feeling them feels very far away because they're like, I don't even know when
I don't even have them, right?
Yeah. It's just like, where do you start with someone like that?
It's so relatable to me because I think that was my story for sure. And to some extent still is. I was not raised with a big emotional vocabulary. We didn't talk about feelings a lot. There was a lot of like sort of suck it up and keep going attitude, right? Very like hard scrabble kind of family. And that can really cause us to look past or invalidate the emotions we're feeling. And then to your point, it's not that we're not having them. They're just taking us under where we might be caught by surprise by what's really going on there. So I think being able to name them is the first step. Like my favorite question is why? Right. So if I'm working with a client and they say, well, I just can't do that. Like, I just can't. Let's take, I can't have my child not do club soccer. Okay. Why? And then they'll start to unpack. And it's usually about 3 whys in that you get to one of those emotions. I will never forget. They will be so mad at me and it will ruin our relationship. This is their favorite thing. It is incumbent on me to sacrifice our family's entire schedule so that this child can do the thing that they love. Or it'll be, well, everyone else is doing it. Their friends are doing it. What will the neighbors think? This is super important to my husband or my mom. Like, you'll get to the bottom of which emotion is starting to bubble. I mentioned exercise earlier. It could be, I cannot change jobs. I just can't. Okay. Why? And then it will come out. There will be some unpacking of what's really underneath that. So typically it is rarely a truly practical reason. It's often masquerading as one, right? Well, I have to make this much money. Okay. Is this the only company in the entire world where you can make this much money? Like, and that maybe has never even occurred to them because that story was enough to stop the curiosity, right? From even progressing. So why followed by, well, what would have to be true? If you were going to change jobs, what would have to be true? If you were going to successfully unenroll your child from club soccer, what would have to be true?
Yeah.
And that opens up, we get back into possibilities territory, which is a much more exciting conversation.
Yeah, I like that question. Another one someone might want to ask themselves is, what would need to happen in order to make this work, even just slightly better than the story that I'm making up? I love that question of, like keep asking why. For those people listening where you tend to really get lost in the story and like the drama of it, sometimes another good question is, what about that is keeping you stuck? What about that is making it hard for you to make the decision? Because sometimes asking that part of the question, like what about that, it will pull the real reason
Specificity.
out. The emotion.
Yeah, like what about that is a good part question because it gets to, well, this actually might be a collection of challenges. And if I can tease out the one specific part of it that I really can't deal with or can't imagine allowing, that's where we can get it. And I always think like so many more people than I ever thought have this level of cognitive rigidity, right? Sort of black and white thinking. It's all or nothing, either or, and really training through repeated effort on how to find middle ground. Well, what are 10 options that would be in the middle is another exercise. It's almost the power of brainstorming, right? Of getting to multiple solutions, many of which you'll discard, but it's still like getting you creatively thinking about how you could find some type of mobility in the situation. I mean, bottom line, nobody likes to feel stuck, right? It's a terrible feeling. Terrible feeling.
What's also interesting too is, now that I've gotten a little bit older, I have the advantage of being able to look back on my life and like different seasons, whether that's, when my kids were younger or whether I was, in, before I had kids in my 20s or even my own childhood. And I look back and I think, what were the important, not emotions, but the important, or not actually things, but like the emotions and experiences that I was having. Cause that's at the end of the day, that's
we feel.
What we have. And that's what we're going to look back on and remember. So it's nice to like look back and think like, cause I think about my own childhood, like what do I remember the most? Cause I also coach a lot of parents and I ask them like, what do you remember the most about your childhood? Like in 30 years, what do you want your children to look back on? Do you want them to be so happy that they were enrolled in every single sport and we're running around like crazy and watching you stressed out? I don't say that, but like, or are they going to remember moments of joy? Because anytime I'm sharing a really great memory from my childhood, it's remembering my mom throwing her head back and singing her heart out to Linda Ronstadt in Spanish. Like, are you kidding me? Like watching my mother experience joy, like I get emotional just thinking about it.
Yes.
And so I know I'm not an outlier here. Like I know
Correct.
that this is what children love. And so just food for thought there. I went off on a little tangent.
No, I think it's really important. And it goes to that notion of having it all is mostly about what life feels like while we're living it, right? It's not a collection of prizes that we have at the end that we've, accumulated and gotten our awards for. It's really the freedom that we have, the flexibility that we have, the choices that we have inside of each and every day to make it feel that way that you're describing. And I think that's, unfortunately, we're overcrowding our plate with things we think we're supposed to be acquiring, or we're applying pressure to ourselves in a quest to get more. And it's actually ruining the day to day.
Yeah. Because America.
Right. Yes. Because hedonic treadmill. Yes. That is why.
Well, and I, since we're on the topic of, asking powerful questions, another question that sometimes I ask my clients that everyone listening can ask yourself is, when you are 75, when you look back on 2024 or this whole decade, what do you want to be proud of? Like, what do you want to smile about? What are the experiences, the feelings, even hard things like messes that you had to clean up. What do you want to look back on to either tell the stories about or to remember fondly? And that's sometimes not a question that you can just answer off the top of your head.
It's not. And it reminds me of this little, like, this is like postable, right? You can put this on your mirror, is live the story you want to tell.
Oh, okay.
A friend gave me that. It's a good question around discernment. Like if you're trying to discern between choices, like what's the story you want to tell? That's probably the choice that you, like, if you want to envision yourself in your 75-year-old question, like, what are the stories you're telling? Those are the experiences you have to be amassing if you want to be able to say, oh, there's this time we did this. But we don't always use that as our sort of divining rod of what's a yes and what's a no, right? We're using other ways of making those choices. But I love that reminder of living the story we want to tell.
How did you, I mean, this is just me being curious. Like, how did you go from being in corporate America to doing this? Like, did you have like your own like midlife crisis, or like, did someone say you would be good at that? What happened? How'd you get here?
I think I followed a series of breadcrumbs is really the true answer. I don't think it was a one fell swoop kind of decision. I was 15 years into my corporate career doing global marketing work, running a $1 billion brand, and I left. I did not yet know I was pregnant with my third child, but I was. So I resigned, found out I was pregnant about a week later. And in that next year, I started what was my first business. This is my second, and had a baby, had my third child. From that moment on, it was like breadcrumb to breadcrumb to breadcrumb, really paying attention to what did I like and what could be better, right? What did I not like? I could probably improve this piece. So my first business was in the health and wellness space, some individual coaching, like one-on-one coaching with people about their health and wellness practices, largely around food. And then that sort of led to a private cooking service where I had a team of people who were going in and making like healthy food for people in their houses, pre-Blue Apron, before HelloFresh existed. Yeah. Then those came in the market. And at some point I looked at I was like, I veered off course here. Like I wanted to be relating to people and helping them like improve their lives. And I am now putting food in their, like somehow I got off the course. Mm-hmm. So I course corrected and got back into the idea of what do I really love the most. And what I had learned in round one of coaching was it was never really about the health and wellness practices. The absence of those was a symptom of some other itch. And that was where I got the bug. And I think I just was like, oh, what I actually love is psychology. I love human behavior. I love human potential. I like figuring out how people are wired and what's in their way and how do you unstick that and kind of get progress reinstated. And that whole puzzle just became wonderfully engaging. And the business has evolved. The way that I practice that has evolved over the last 10 years or so to what it is today, but it's always been following those breadcrumbs.
Interesting. I had a similar experience. In a previous life, I was a personal trainer, and I realized over and over again, because my clients were all women, and they would come wanting to be more in shape, and their reasons for doing it, I don't know if I just have the face for it, but people, they tended to pour out their hearts and tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. And it just got to the point where I was like, this is not the answer for you. Of course, health and wellness is important, but and I had to look at my own stuff too, because I was them, like thinking like miles on the treadmill, calories burned, like that was the solution to my problems. When actually, no, that was kind of one of the causes of my problems. So yeah, similar story.
And picking up that thread, what you said earlier about we were all sold this collective set of expectations and we're mad about that. I think we were told that if we had the perfect body, life would be perfect. So of course we go there. Of course we're going to try to diet and exercise our way into nirvana. And as you and I both know, this is not a recipe for success, but it is one that many people are still to this day trying to follow, because until we unlearn that, we're stuck in that loop.
I had that moment, and it's sort of controversial when I talk. I used to write about it a lot and just stopped because anyway, it's a long story. But I had that moment around like early 2000s, and that was at the height of diet culture. I mean, we were in it. The low-rise jeans, the very, what was quote unquote in style was this very thin beauty standard, and I got my way there, and my body was not happy. My body does not like to be that thin. And I remember being there and being so miserable and so hungry and so sick, both physically and mentally and emotionally, and being really angry that I felt duped. I felt just like, what happened? I played by the rules, and I'm not here. And honestly, that was such an ignition point, a flashpoint, if you will, of, oh, well, this isn't the answer. I have to go inward. It's not external. It's all inside. And that really was the beginning of, what has brought me here. And I do feel like I've come a million miles away. I mean, I was in my late 20s then, and now I'm in my late 40s.
You know what's so interesting, Andrea? You said earlier in this conversation that one of the things that blocked you from progress, like when you look at your life curve, was, will I be able to sustain this success? Like, if I have it and I get there, can I sustain it?
Yeah.
And you've had that experience. I mean, that you actually lived out that experience of, I got to the success of the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So interesting.
Yeah, because I had that quote unquote success, and I don't even
you don't even want to call it
word,
that,
even with air quotes. Right. But I also have had professional success beyond my wildest dreams. With my second book being translated into 20 languages and selling hundreds of thousands of copies. And I mean, there are self-help authors who have gone far beyond that. But for me, it was beyond anything I ever expected. So when people ask me, like, what's next for you? And I'm like, I went beyond my 10-year plan, far beyond it. And so it was also one of those things where when it happened, it felt like a plunk, like, just like, is this it? And, even professional success is not going to bring you what it is that you want. And like the thing that I'm after, if I can, hopefully that people can relate listening to this, that I've realized, taking me a long time to realize this, the thing that I have been searching for my entire life, and I've had it before, and it's like kind of keep chasing that high, again, air quotes, is the feeling of being alive, just like the joy of feeling alive. And I have realized, this might make me emotional, in order to get there, I have had to make the most gut-wrenching decisions of my life, of my life to get to the other side.
Because stripping away the things that don't make you feel alive is kind of the clearing out, the clears the path. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like I have a friend she's a poet. She's such a good writer, Carrie Klassen, and she talks about grief in this way. And she said, those spoons that are kind of old fashioned that grandmas usually have for grapefruit, and they have a serrated edge around the spoon, kind of like a knife, but it's not that aggressive. She's like, that's what it feels like, of just like your insides being scooped out with this serrated spoon. And that's what I think of when I think about making choices in your life.
Yes.
That bring you the peace, the relief, the joy, the aliveness, whatever experience and feeling you're looking for, having to scoop away, whether it's parts of you that no longer serve you, whether it's people, whether it's a job, boundaries. Like, for me personally, that has been my hardest but most meaningful life's work.
Yeah. I've never heard the serrated grapefruit spoon analogy. That is brilliant.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I usually think about it as like the bow and arrow, that you're getting pulled backwards to launch forward, right? There's something that feels like loss to enable the forward momentum. But I think that some things in life really are gutting in the way that you were describing the grapefruit spoon. I'm taking that one with me.
Yeah, Carrie Klassen, she's brilliant. And it's just, I just want to say this for anyone listening where this is meaningful for you. If there is something in your life happening right now and your intuition is pointing at it softly, there's your answer.
Don't look past the obvious.
I mean, you can for a little while until you can't anymore. I did. I have for years. Okay. We need to take one more ad break. When we get back, I want to ask you about how do we get back on if we've fallen off? So we'll be right back. when you're listening to a song on the radio and you get the profound feeling that the song playing was written about you? Now imagine having the power to gift that same incredible feeling to someone you love with an original song from Songfinch that actually is written just for them. Songfinch lets you create an original radio quality song inspired by your own life and the people you love. It's completely unique, personal, and lasts forever. Whether your song is for Father's Day, an upcoming graduation, wedding, or anniversary, or even just a gift to show your loved one how much you care, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists. I gifted Songfinch to myself, a song about my late father, and I'm so excited to play you a clip.
Flipping through the slides of learning how to live and how to love, and coming undone, a father, daughters without, so she writes it down.
One of my clients heard about Songfinch from this podcast, and so she had a song created for her son who is graduating, and she told me that they both cried when she played it for him and that it exceeded her expectations. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their song to Spotify for free, so you and the lucky person you gift it to can listen to it anywhere, anytime. Go to songfinch.com/noise and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, a $50 value. Again, my URL is songfinch.com/noise. Don't forget to share your song with us too. songfinch.com/noise.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Oh, hey, everybody. It's us, Blair and Molly, your old pals from Toddler Purgatory. Two moms who are also actors, who are also creative beings, who sometimes feel stuck. And this is our new podcast, Unsticking It with Blair and Molly. What happens when your creative spark just seems to disappear? Gone. Poof. Bye. See ya. What happens when life gets in the way of your creativity instead of nourishing it? That's what happened to Molly and me. We felt like the thing that drove us creatively stopped working, and impending doom had in fact impended. Totally. So we decided to do something about it. And that was steal ideas about getting unstuck from the most creative people we can find. We talk to guests about how to break through the mucky, gluey, sticky wall that can get between you and your creativity. We hear about their journeys, their successes, their challenges, and even their bougie coffee shop orders. And we're not just talking Bob Ross type paint on paper artists here, though we talk to them too. We're talking to actors, creative directors, dancers, and people who are working hard to be their best creative selves in a world that can sometimes feel real uncreative. We all have something to teach each other, so let's steal their ideas together. Join us, won't you, as we deep dive into how to unstick ourselves from the life gunk that can get in the way of our creative freedom. Pandemics, school calendars, world events, lack of sleep. Oh, get out of their life gunk. And let's get back to your best creative self. Subscribe to Unsticking It with Blair and Molly. You're not going to want to miss an episode. Unsticking It with Blair and Molly, because sometimes life sucks. Unsticking it.
All right. So I talk a lot about, not a lot, but I normalize inconsistency, because I feel like that's another thing that we make up, like, oh, I'm so inconsistent, and beat ourselves up over it. And I tell people, unless that person does it for a living, and by it, I mean, they're in the fitness industry, they do personal development, like those people are probably the most consistent with the thing that you're feeling inconsistent about. The rest of us, inconsistent. Like my workouts, fairly inconsistent. And I just have accepted it, and it goes so much better that way. So How do we get back on if we have fallen off track in terms of finding our balance, doing things for us, prioritizing ourselves, etc.?
Yes. Gosh, you're so right that it is normalized. We need to normalize falling off, right? That it just does happen. I think about safety nets as the concept here. What is the safety net? Where are you going to predictably and intentionally remind yourself that you meant to be doing this thing? Right? So if you make the assumption, like you just said, if your going in assumption is, I am going to be inconsistent, I am going to fall off of this pattern of behavior that I want to be on, what is my predetermined safety net reminder strategy that says, hey, you, remember 2 weeks ago we said we were going to do this? Like, where are we? So I use digital reminders a lot, and I do not ignore them. Some people ignore digital reminders, and I think that's dicey, right? If you're somebody who's just learned to like ignore it, it's popping up and you're ignoring it, you need to find something that's more interruptive. I use a week in review process that allows me to look at just, here's what I said I was going to do. Did I do it? And that's pretty habitualized for me to live my week out from a plan and come back at the end of the week and say, did I do the things I said I was going to do? I'm a big fan of things like what I call the star chart, like from kindergarten, where they would put your star up if you did your thing. Something very visible and simple, not an app, nothing crazy, just visible and simple of did I do the thing or not, which really shows you I'm not doing it. We have to ask ourselves why when the safety net is saying, hey, you didn't do the thing that you said you were going to do gently. What's up? Why are you not doing it? We have to ask ourselves, like, would I make the same decisions again? And sometimes I go, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I said I was going to do that and I didn't do it. I'd make the same decision again. And sometimes I have to go, no, I got in my own way. Why? Why did I get in my own way? And this brings you back to the next series of why questions, right? Because the thing is, the things we really want to do and that we like doing, we do them.
Yeah, that's true. Not always consistently, but the things that we, because I used to be in the fitness industry, and what was the expression we used? Lack of momentum brings on lack of motivation.
Sure.
And so it is just about doing whatever works for you to get back on track.
Back in momentum. Yep.
Yeah. And I love that you said like digital reminders might not be for you.
My husband would ignore every digital reminder. I mean, those alarms can be going off and he's just like turning them off and moving on. Like I didn't even read what they said. So you have to know, but I do find pre-setting for myself things in my calendar or pre-setting for myself things that are just like my digital brain. I use a super fancy system like Monday.com. I keep everything in my personal life in it in addition to my work life. So I have a lot of reminders to just say to me, like you said you were going to do this.
It sounds like you have.
Yeah, systems. And again, I don't count on myself, especially for a new habit, especially something that's not well established. You are not going to remember to do it unless you habit stack it with another thing, unless you have accountability and somebody's doing it with you, unless there's like a scheduled time. You are not just going to start meditating if you don't meditate. Right. You're just not.
And it's not on your calendar. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I do think the visible nature of this is something I am checking off and I am seeing it every day and it is in front of me, much more likely to adopt it. At a minimum, you won't forget, right? And then what you're confronting is, oh, I was reminded and I still chose not to do it. So why was that? That's a whole different game. And that's where we're starting to get into mindset questions as a coach, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Before we close up, is there anything that you want to circle back to or add to this conversation to make sure that you say in order to feel complete?
I just think maybe we go back to where we started with the notion of, I'm on a mission to redefine what it means to have it all. And the generation of women that I am working with are still trying to figure that out. And I think where we started this conversation was it is a deeply personal decision. There is not a right answer, but it is imperative that you know what it is for you. So if you're not sure, right, and you're chasing somebody else's definition of all, you are really at risk of getting to the end of life with a lot of regret about, I did not do the things that actually were important to me. I did not live the way that I meant to live. And so I'm looking back at this life and going, I did not live the story that I want to tell, right? That's what we want to avoid. And so the sooner you can get some tools or books or people or podcasts to help you get that in order and really feel solid that you're living that life with intention, I think the better you're going to feel.
I love that. Thank you so much. And where can people find more about you and your work?
So thank you for asking. I think the podcast is a great starting place, and you can find it by going to brilliant-balance.com. That's the website. You can link to the podcast there. We have a playlist curated that's kind of a greatest hits situation, and you can also take a look at the other things at the site.
Thank you so much for being here. And listeners, I know how valuable your time is. I appreciate that you spend it with me and my guests. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes. AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
Hey there, I'm Debbie Reber, the founder of Tilt Parenting and the author of the book Differently Wired. The mission of Tilt is to change the way neurodivergence, whether that's having a learning disability, having ADHD, being gifted, autistic, or some combination of all of the above, is perceived and experienced so differently wired kids and the parents like us raising them can truly thrive. On the Tilt Parenting podcast, I get to talk with authors, therapists, educators, and parenting experts who are committed to this mission. I ask the questions my listeners are most curious about when it comes to supporting our kids. And in turn, my guests share strategies for challenges, out-of-the-box ideas for navigating school, best practices for therapies, tips for advocating, and so many thoughtful insights on what it really takes to help our kids grow up feeling seen and respected so they can create awesome lives for themselves. I know that raising a differently wired kid can feel overwhelming and isolating, but I promise you, you are not alone, and it can feel so much better. If you're on this parenting journey, come listen to Tilt Parenting. Together, we can shift this paradigm and show up for our exceptional kids with hope, possibility, and joy.